When people think about AI, they think, okay, robots are going to take over the world. If you ask in a chatbot, it's automatically going to pull all of that data from the internet into a narrative format for you to where you don't have to spend hours and hours clicking and scrolling for exactly what you want. If you think if asking someone is going to be a stupid question, ask the chatbot.
Ask chatbot.
Yeah. This is your world, right? You understand this better than anybody.
Our special guest, Shelby Talent.
We're starting to look at ways to provide convenience to people. People need insight, data. They need the ability to make decisions quickly. Not only are you a full-time parent at home sometimes, you probably have a full-time job. And I think that's where AI comes into the picture.
So really you're saying that AI can take over anything as our search engine. It can actually be even more intuitive because it's learning who you are and be able to tailor things even better for you?
It does. I'm the first one from my family to go to college, get a degree. First one to buy a house. I was the first one to build my house. Mainly grew up in trailer parks my whole life. These things are not things that I can go to someone and be able to get that advice. So it's nice to kind of be able to utilize a tool to do that.
What are some of the bad things that come with AI that you're seeing now or that you could see in the future?
One thing that I've noticed is
welcome to another episode of the Seattle Living and Wealth Building Show. You are going to have your mind blown today. So can't wait to introduce you to our special guest. First of all, we've got Michael Dapper, Justin Day, the usual suspects. Yeah, but we're incredibly excited to bring on Shelby Talent, one of our amazing clients, friends of the Wagner Real Estate Group. We're fortunate to have her on with all her expertise and experience in a topic that we all hear about, but not everybody truly understands. So Shelby's got 15 plus years of experience currently, Senior Director, Head of AI and Product Research at WREG, worked for companies like Amazon, a lot of experience and expertise in the space, former U.S. Navy, right, as well. And she loves dogs and cats and makes sure they all get along. And don't hold this against her. She likes Baker Mayfield as well.
yes. I will be sending Baker Mayfield this video to her.
Well, perfect. Welcome. Thank you for coming on. Tell everybody a little bit more other than my introduction why they should listen to you.
Yeah, so taking a few steps back to a few years ago, I actually relocated from the Texas area over Christmas break of 2019, right before the pandemic came. My wife and I had an opportunity to come up here for me to work at Amazon. I helped lead the AI and data strategy for the Amazon pick, pack, and delivery process, which was really important during those times. I think everyone needed groceries, everyone needed toilet paper, and you couldn't find the toilet paper. My wife was a nurse manager of the second COVID ICU in the nation, so my job was not as hard as hers. And during that time, we were in corporate housing, so we were struggling to find a house. Everything was kind of shut down. And that's how we got introduced to the Wagner Group. We made a lovely connection, was able to find a home pretty early on in the process, get out of corporate housing, and get settled so that we could really help the community of Seattle. And then also for us just to lay roots and really start to grow our foundation here as well. I've really enjoyed being up here, both from a personal perspective, but also professionally. I've been embedded in data science, data engineering, data strategy type roles for the last 8 or 9 years of my 15-year career. And one thing that I've definitely seen is we're starting to look at ways to provide convenience to people. People need insights, they need data, they need the ability to make decisions quickly because our capacity has increased as individuals. Not only are you a full-time parent at home sometimes, you probably have a full-time job. You also have pets. Maybe you're taking care of an ailing parent. So the things that you want to focus on, they're becoming harder and harder. And I think that's where AI comes into the picture. And for me, I think that really the Seattle market is one of the top hubs for AI. So I'm very appreciative to be here, but just excited to talk about its use, kind of destigmatize some of the scary things about it, and help give some tips and tricks to really help you in your everyday life.
Wow, fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So where does somebody start? Let's just start there, right? Because right? For somebody who doesn't really understand AI, use AI, AI is probably everywhere that we don't even know it's AI, but it's AI, right? What would be some advice you give for somebody right now to say, okay, how to learn to start using AI?
Yeah, so first off, when people think about AI, they think, okay, robots are going to take over the world.
Yeah.
Aren't they?
Not yet, anyway. We have some really good things happening where there's AI governance and policies that are being established across the U.S. and other countries. So there is AI governance. And what AI governance means is even though we may automatically have a machine learning and doing something to automate something or provide insights, there still has to be some type of human oversight or an intervention. So that's where the robots are not going to take over the world yet because they're being watched. Basically, we have a criminal justice system. In our everyday lives, we get to be the police for the AI. And it's up to people like me and my peers to be able to do that. Some easy ways to kind of get started initially is just go online and go to ChatGPT or Google Gemini or Microsoft Copilot. They're an AI-based chatbot. They're supposed to be conversational. So when you're talking to a chatbot, start off with some easy prompts. So saying, hey, can you tell me what the weather is like in Nashville, Tennessee in October? And you may be asking that because you're like, hey, my sister's going to get married in Nashville, Tennessee, and I need to know what to bring. And you can say, hey, tell me what the weather's like and tell me what I should pack in my suitcase for a 5 to 7 day stay. And it'll be able to populate for you. And it'll give you an output, and you can actually respond and say, hey, can you actually remove this from the packing list and add in items to maybe help us with going skiing because we're going to go to the mountains one day? And it'll be like, cool, let me regenerate that for you. So that's a good way to start. Ways to kind of think about it, like if you think you need to Google something, or maybe you need to pick up the phone and call your mom or dad, your best friend, your uncle who happens to be a CPA and knows everything about the financial industry. Before doing that, just ask a chatbot and see how it's like. And it's going to take maybe, I want to say 30 to 60 days of use for it to really learn your kind of like typing style, the type of words that you use, but it actually learns off of you and it'll actually become better to generate the content that you're exactly looking for.
Oh, that's really interesting. So I didn't know that. So like I knew that, the AI chatbots or, ChatGPT is like a large language learning model, right? So I had pictured it that it's gathering information from all over the web, anything that's, any database, whatever, but I didn't know that it would learn how to interact with you better based off of your conversational style with this.
Yeah, it does. So think about when you pull your cell phone out. You have different conversations, different text messages. When you go to ChatGPT, they also have new conversations that you can start. So you can start a new conversation, say, I want to talk about recipes that are low calorie, high protein. Or maybe I would like to figure out a budgeting strategy so I can save money so that I can list my home to sell. So you can keep those separate, and within those conversations, that natural language model that is going in the background is learning based upon that conversation. So if you also feel like your conversation is going somewhere that you don't like, sometimes what I'll do, I'll just start a new conversation and press the reset button. I'm like, okay, you've learned a little bit too much. You're going outside the thresholds. You need to calm down.
Right.
Yeah.
You put baby in a corner, and I'm going to start a new conversation and see how this goes. So
really, you're saying that AI in general, ChatGPT, whatever it may be, can take over from us using Google or anything as our search engine.
yeah.
And just use that exclusively, and it can actually be even more intuitive because it's learning who you are, how you speak to the ChatGPT, and be able to tailor things even better for you.
It does. And the other item I want to say is the level of convenience. When you Google something, you kind of have to click into each of the links. You kind of have the Google marketing advertised ones at the top from the search engine optimization. And then you have further links that you go to the other pages. So you're clicking through those links, you're scrolling, you're reading, you're trying to figure out, okay, is this information I like? Is it short and concise? Is this one too wordy? That one's too long. There's too many pictures. There's ads that are popping up. Can this CAPTCHA thing that tells me if this is a bicycle goes away so I can read this article?
Yes.
Are you a robot?
Yeah, are you a robot?
No, are you a robot?
So if you ask in a chatbot, it's automatically going to pull all of that data from the internet into a narrative format for you and be able to tell you. And if you want, you can even ask the chatbot to say, hey, can you provide the sources for the answer that you provide me? So you can validate, or maybe you want to reference it. But it's an easy way to where you don't have to spend like minutes and minutes or hours and hours clicking and scrolling for exactly what you want.
And so just to clarify, I mean, obviously this is your world, right? Like you understand this better than anybody, or not, better than 99.9% of people. And so, yeah, but obviously you've become very comfortable in using AI and Chat GPT and whatnot to do these things. And you think the average person would feel comfortable in doing that in pretty quick order?
Yeah, I think to get comfortable, you have to think about what it can provide as a convenience or an advantage to you. When people think of a chatbot, they're like, these darn kids are using it to write papers and they're plagiarizing. And that's one of the main things that people don't like about these chatbots. Like, it's taking over, that it's plagiarism. Well, outside of that one use case, do you actually worry about plagiarism in your everyday life for the majority of stuff that you do, unless you work in academia or you work in editorial or something? No. I actually, instead of going to Google search, I like to use a chatbot as a sounding board. Hey, I've encountered this difficult situation. I'm trying to navigate it. This is my notes on it. Can you help me figure out what an approach is to address this? And it'll actually come back with a process to recommend to me so that I can navigate that successfully, or think about things from an outside perspective. Because each one of us, we have our own expertise, we have our own history, we have our own background. We don't know everything in the world, and we're going to have blind spots. So why not use a tool to our advantage to maybe help fill that blind spot?
Especially when emotions get involved too. If you're going to respond to someone, and if you can use a tool like ChatGPT or a chatbot to kind of run through your thoughts with that, and all of a sudden it comes through a lot more level-headed and a lot more appropriate for what the response should be.
Yes, it does. And for someone like me, who's very extroverted, obviously I'm wearing a lot of pink. I like to be seen. I'm 5'2". I have short person syndrome. For me, I think quickly. It's funny because I've been asked before, do you have a voice inside your head, like when you're thinking you can hear your voice? And the majority of people do. So do you, when you think, do you have a voice inside your head?
Sure.
What about you?
Yeah.
I normally don't. I just think, and like the words immediately come out of my mouth.
They come out, yeah.
They come out.
Filter.
I have a high processing rate, I like to say. I do need a filter. So by utilizing a chatbot to kind of pause, type things out, wait for a response, it actually helps me with a place where I personally need growth.
Okay.
That's awesome.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you can answer this in a way that I would understand, but what is the difference, or where's the line between, like, okay, Google, when we Google something, a question, what's the weather like in, what was your example?
Nashville.
Nashville, okay. Like, what is the difference between doing that? That's not what people consider being AI. That's like a complex algorithm gathering data across the web, right? What is the line between using like ChatGPT and now that's intelligence or learning? Like, does that make sense what my question is? Like, how are those two things different? And I know that they are, besides that ChatGPT will summarize it in one direct voice.
Yeah, so one thing that I've started doing, so once you first get comfortable as a starting point, ask the simple question, see what it responds with. I actually like to use it to like delegate some things that I need. I recently was testing our internal AI-powered chatbot at my company that's for the market and credit intelligence industry. And I was calculating all of these response rates from the chatbot. I actually put it in an Excel document, uploaded it to ChatGPT, and I said, hey, can you help me figure out what the average response time of this was, and help me figure out what the decrease in response speed was over the last 3 versions? It calculated all that, in a matter of like 30 seconds.
Wow.
And I was able just to copy that summary. So it took something that would probably be a 5 to 10 minute task for me and did it in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
So you can actually utilize it in a way to delegate tasks. But if you do that, you have to make sure that the questions that you're asking are very clear and concise. So example, I'm a product manager. I want to build a new product, and I'm like, hey, I want to be able to enable a summarize feature on all of our articles that are customer facing. Cool. Well, I could go to the chatbot and say, hey, this is what I want to do. Can you help me identify who my target customers are? Can you define what the problem statement, the objective is? Can you give me some user stories to help give my data science and my AI application team, as well as acceptance criteria? And I literally say just that, and it will literally output everything that I can just read over it, maybe change a couple things, copy and paste it, and put it in a ticket for my developers. And instead of me spending 45 minutes to an hour trying to come up with all of those points all at once, it was able to do that for me. And I can then prioritize my time focusing on things that are probably more customer facing in my everyday job.
Interesting. So you give it an input, and then from that input, that kind of directive, then it will compose.
Talk to it like it's your employee. Like if you were going to
Just a really smart one.
Yeah.
Really responsible.
Say if you're going to go on vacation and you need someone to cover you at work, what would you tell someone in the handover process to do the job for you? So that's the easiest way that I could describe that.
It's like to help you script even, just how to have a conversation, right? Versus making it up on your own.
Yeah.
And putting your foot in your mouth.
But that's really helpful, like
Hang on.
professionally. But personally, like things that I've used it for is I've really started investing lately and trying to put more money aside now that I've gotten to a higher position and I've paid off a lot of my debt from my 20s, some student loans, things like that. So I'm like, hey, how much money would I have in 30 years if I put X amount of money into a high yield savings that's on average 4.5% interest, and it compounds over those 30 years, what is the estimate amount that I would have by the time that I'm 65 and I'm 32 today? And it's able just to calculate that.
Calculator.
And it gives me kind of an insight into like, okay, cool. Like I know that putting this aside is actually setting me up for success. Like this is actually above what I was expecting, or maybe this is a little bit lower. So maybe I need to delete some subscriptions and be more mindful about my spending. So, which is helpful because I'm at that point in my life where we've lived really close to the inner city of Seattle, but we want to adopt. And we have a 1940s Craftsman that was remodeled. It's lovely, but it is not enough space to be able to grow a family on top of having 3 dogs and 2 cats.
Yeah.
So we'd like to move a little bit outside the city and be able to adopt and grow our family in that way. But to get there, I need to put money aside to prepare my house to sell and get that money back, as well as putting money aside for maybe earnest money or down payment for our next house. So, and it's a sounding board, and it gives me that foundation, and there's not anyone in my family that can give me this financial expertise. I'm the first one from my family to go to college, she had to get a degree, first one to buy a house, I was the first one to build my house.
Wow.
Mainly grew up in trailer parks my whole life, minus one apartment in high school. So these things are not things that I can go to someone and be able to get that advice. So it's nice to kind of be able to utilize a tool to do that. And also it allows me to acknowledge my own vulnerabilities and not having that knowledge.
That's cool. I mean, so it's like if you're kind of, you don't have experience with that, or you don't know somebody that does, or you didn't see that growing up, to kind of like bridge that step, because a lot of people like in our industry, they don't want to talk to a real estate agent because they've never done it before. So if you've never seen, talk to a financial advisor or something, maybe this is a great first step.
Yep.
To kind of, keep it between you and the bot.
Yeah, like if you think if asking someone is going to be a stupid question, ask the chatbot.
Ask chatbot.
Yeah, that's great.
So
It's fascinating.
beyond chatbots, I mean, obviously chatbots are great, but AI is so much bigger and so much larger than that. So what are some real life examples of AI in the world that we live in now? Just a couple ideas that maybe listeners aren't aware of, or maybe they don't even think that it's AI.
Yeah, so like if you use Google Maps or Waze, they actually have AI on the back end that is analyzing all of the traffic patterns in every city. So that's why I recommend, especially if you live in Seattle, like hands down, always use Waze because there's going to be some pileup on I-5, or they're going to shut the I-90 bridge down to repaint the lines on a weekend, and you're not going to be able to get to your nail appointment, like happened to me 3 weeks ago. So it actually utilizes AI to help redirect you and help you get from point A to point B the quickest. Second example, healthcare. They have AI that is assisting with cancer identification. So it actually can look at your images and be able to potentially detect cancer within those images and give a pre-assessment before a radiologist or another medical professional can sign off on it. So that is
like a picture of your face or arm,
or if you've gotten CT scans, X-rays, anything like that. I think that's really, really interesting. I think it's wonderful to be able to have that automation because the healthcare industry is so overwhelmed right now. They actually don't have enough nurses, healthcare workers, doctors. So being able to take AI and implement it into there, it's going to help provide the best level of care to patients and hopefully get you answers quicker. Because detecting something like cancer maybe 2 weeks earlier instead of 2 weeks later, that may be the difference for some people. So that's a really good example. Other things that I'm potentially thinking of is weather patterns. They're actually using AI to detect earthquakes, tsunamis, the tectonic plates. There was actually a 4.7 magnitude earthquake that hit in New Jersey area this morning. It actually shook all of Manhattan. The Japanese individuals over in Japan, they already have groundbreaking intelligence with AI use to help predict and prepare the people if there's another tsunami or earthquake again because of what they went through back in 2010, 2011 timeframe. So that stuff is being developed everywhere globally, and that's going to really help save lives.
Wow.
Fascinating.
What about, like, obviously those are tangible uses that maybe people aren't going to use every day.
No.
And those are obviously fantastic things. But, I mean, I think a lot of people, as you said, like, robots and taking over the world, and people have this stigma of, like, that AI isn't going to be good for our society as a whole. That's stigma. But, what are some of the bad things that come with AI, maybe that you're seeing now or that you could see in the future?
Yeah, so because AI is new and a lot of the models are just being built, they're starting with a foundational data set to go off of. One thing that I've noticed is there can be bias in data. I believe that recently Google had an incident where some of their models were depicting people of color as Nazis because someone said, hey, can you generate an image of Nazis for me?
Yeah.
And it was not factually correct. There was bias in the data. And it was something that they really had to take a step back and acknowledge, which they did, and then figure out a way to mitigate it. So even if we do have these natural language processing models, we have these machine learning models doing artificial intelligence, there needs to be people who govern them, but also retune them. It's like your car. I mean, you take your car in to rotate your tires, check your tire pressure, oil change. It's the same thing with these models. We can't just let them sit there in a stagnant state with the same type of data. You always have to be bringing in more data and making sure that you're setting thresholds and guardrails in place for what you want that AI to do.
That brings up another good topic, though, which is, obviously it needs to continually learn and continually be updated and whatnot. But I remember when ChatGPT first was introduced to me anyways, that it was utilizing data that was old. And so maybe that's the free version of ChatGPT, or can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, you always want to have older data. So most chatbots are going to go anywhere from 3 to 7 years back historical data for the most part. Because if you're trying to get insights into maybe why there was a market change, or maybe why the housing market has shifted, why have prices increased in the last 2-3 years, why is the market slow in December, it has to look at those trends. So it's not only just storing this data. When you ask a question, it's analyzing the data and inferring what it's trying to answer for you and providing you with the best answer relevance as well as context relevance. Now, the challenge is if it doesn't have enough data, the chatbot can what they call hallucinate, where it can make an assumption that it doesn't have a source for and provide you an answer back. So you have to be careful and be mindful with what you're provided with. Again, like double check it. Like don't take everything it provides you factually correct. It's like a good salesperson. I hate to say it. You go and they're like, oh, this is the best car on earth. You want a Jeep Wrangler. It's going to last you 80 years. And then you get in the Jeep Wrangler and 2 days later you got the Jeep Wrangler shake of death.
You bought a Jeep Wrangler ticket.
I've wanted to. I've been in one when the death shake happened. But it's one of those things where you have to constantly just be mindful of what you're personally ingesting. You can't just take everything in and be the messenger of it. Again, there's some parts that you're going to find useful and some things you're going to just throw away. It's like when your boss comes to you and tells you things, and you probably take 80% of it and the other 20% you're like, cool. I got things to prioritize.
That's interesting. Yeah, I'd like to see, like, for us, right, our show, a lot of our audiences, they're home buyers, they're investors. Can you use it to go, I'm worried that the market is going to crash. Should I worry? Right.
I've asked that question.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, you can, because what it's going to do is, depending on their sources, it's going to look at all the news articles that are out there. So if the New York Times, CNN, Fox, MSNBC, any of those have been talking about the market, or it's ingesting any type of financial data, like public-facing data points like SEC filings, 10Ks, 10Qs, maybe press releases from large companies like Amazon, Google, Microsoft. It can say, yeah, like this business was down in revenue by 6%. The S&P has hit record lows. There were 4,000 people that were laid off in December. It'll give you an oversight as long as you're asking it for that level of detail.
Right. So I think that's practical uses that people can, relate to, which is the common questions or concerns that people are having, right?
But I don't want to pigeonhole people into just asking serious questions all the time too. Like use it to say, hey, I want to write a love poem for my loved one, and it'll help you with that. Or
ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, love poem.
Apology letter for...
an apology letter, maybe writing a sick note for your kid. I personally like to play a bard when I play Dungeons & Dragons with my friends, so I will use it to come up with quick ditties in fighting scenarios and read from that. But it's a good balance. If you can figure out how to use it for serious things and personal things, you'll start that it's getting intertwined into your day-to-day use. You'll naturally start to go away from asking things to Google or picking up the phone and calling someone, and you treat the chatbot in a conversation. But I've personally gotten the most value out of it this last year when I've made that pivot to really helping with figuring out when to sell my home and looking at the market.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask you as somebody who is going through a real-life example of, right, I need to move, my house doesn't fit my needs currently, right? What questions did you ask?
Yeah, so for my house that I need to sell, I was like, how much should I save to sell my house, get it staged, get it ready? Here are some of the things that I believe are wrong with the house. The paint is chipping on the outside. My pets have had accidents on the carpet. My baseboards have been gnawed on by a puppy. And it will actually, and I can say, hey, can you come up with an estimate for how much I should put aside if these are the things I want to fix before listing my house? And it'll actually come up with a budget for that. Now, if I'm looking at potentially buying, one thing that I'm not really an expert on is the Seattle Pacific Northwest area. So I'm like, hey, what neighborhoods outside of the Seattle Metroplex are good to live in, have the highest school ratings, which ones have low crime rates, which ones have easable, walkable distance to restaurants. And it was able to provide an output for me. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. Like, maybe I want to look at like Renton or Newcastle. Like, I don't want to necessarily be in Bellevue or Redmond because it's a little bit too much out of my budget, but I can get close enough. And I don't want to be too far away, such as like Tacoma, because my wife works in Bellevue, and that wouldn't really be a nice experience to be able to drive there and back every single day.
So this is interesting. So when you were talking about the, what it's pulling from, like sometimes the news, articles that it could be pulling from will be going in a trend one way or another. Either really, really positive, like when the real estate was booming, right? Everybody was doubling value in their house. That wasn't actually factually true, but that's what the news was saying. And then when it was going down, everybody was losing money. So, is it pulling from news, like a media article, and then also like factual numbers to back that up, or do you know, or
I think it's a little bit of both. Yeah. Right. So if you're using something like ChatGPT or Google Gemini or Microsoft Copilot, they're going to be bringing in their own data sources, and that could be news articles, press releases. Again, it could be
financial
reports.
Yeah.
I can't speak on behalf of those companies for them, but the assumption on my part is they have a little bit of both. And I think the reason you have a little bit of both is you don't want to just have a robot talking to you with like facts and numbers. You kind of want to have a little bit more context. Like, why did this company decide to lay off 10,000 people and then rehire 5,000 people the next month? And then you find out, you get an output, and it's like they actually launched this new product and it resulted in X amount of money, and they were able to rehire these people back. That's kind of a little bit of a feel-good story,
So that's like the intelligence part of it, right? That's what makes it
Yeah,
interesting.
So large sample sizes, right? So they're not just pulling all the headline clickbait articles.
Well, they're probably pulling in articles from Fox News and CNBC at the same time and finding something in the middle,
Yeah. But for me, it's just a nice place to go when I'm not 100% solid about what's going on. I need a sounding board. I need someone to talk to. Your spouse may work a different schedule than you. I actually work Eastern hours, so I can't just pick up the phone in the middle of the day and say, hey, honey, I want to talk about this thing. Usually I have to wait till the evening to do that. Instead, I go ask the questions, or I just decide that, I want to take this information and then I want to go validate it. So sometimes if I do get an output and I'm questionable about it, then I may go back to Google or to the library or something else and just say, hey, does that line up? And if it does, then you can start to build a little bit more confidence in the use of it. And again, I do not think that we're anywhere near the point of having AI without human oversight and intervention, just because that's not how machine learning models have been built the last 10 years that we've been doing it, 10, 15 years. You always have to retune them. It's just like a car.
Yeah, I think especially when you're considering the idea of selling your house and buying a new one, I mean, we're obviously real estate professionals, but having that conversation with your real estate professional makes a ton of sense as well, because then you can really figure out, okay, well, is what they're saying actually accurate based on what I'm hearing from AI? And then subsequently, am I getting the right information from AI?
Yeah, like a specific...
You can't be trusting, I guess you could be trusting one source, but...
Saying you start there, right? It's the machine telling you, give you a lot of real information based on what's out there. But then support it with context and the things that the machine can't understand necessarily.
And like a real life situation that happened, I believe last June, July timeframe, we'd actually moved forward with putting down money for a new built house. We were really excited for it. My sister came up from Texas. We even took her to the model home, and we were at the point where we were about to put our earnest money down. And it's Sunday at like almost 9-10 p.m. at night, I got this email from my CEO that said, hey, since we didn't IPO last year and the market's been bad, we're actually going to be merging with another company. And I was like, I'm supposed to put money down tomorrow. And I just had this really bad gut feeling about the news. I actually went to the chatbot because honestly, my wife was so excited about the house because she was like, house, check, then adoption, baby.
Yeah, the whole dream is right
coming together.
It was there, and for me, I'm the impulsive one in my marriage. I'm the one that will quickly make decisions, move forward. So for me to have to sit there in that, it was nice to kind of formulate that in the chatbot and think through the scenario and talk through. I'm like, this is how much debt I have. This is the current situation. Can you give me more insight into the market? How many layoffs are occurring? And I had to make a very tough call, sitting her down that evening and telling her that I didn't feel good about it. We were going to pull out of it. And literally, I mean, the contract was ready just for our signature. Wasn't it, Justin?
100%.
100%.
It literally was like that morning it was going to happen. And
Yep. And
there's a blessing in disguise, obviously, finding out that late. But I mean, that's cool. I didn't even realize that you had a ChatGPT conversation about it.
So
Yeah.
what did it tell you?
Well, it told me that based upon everything that it would be a risky situation, which it was, because I hate to say it, a month and a half later, I got laid off.
Right.
And that I wouldn't have been able to get into the house anyway with being impacted by a layoff. So it was nice to have that in that moment, because especially getting an email at 9-10 p.m. at night, all of our family lives in Central Time or Eastern Time. There was no one I could pick up the phone and talk to at that point.
Sure.
And you literally have less than 15 hours before you're making this very large financial and personal decision.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to use ChatGPT now just for more everyday use, right, as something to think about, because instead what I'm doing is sorting through all the different articles, right? It's wasting a bunch of time. I feel like I'm going to save 10 hours a week already just thinking about this. There's just so many practical uses of it.
Yeah.
And it's different than, Hey Siri, Alexa. So I think a lot of people, I'm speaking for
Yeah, I think
myself,
you just
but they have experiences with that, and like, AI is stupid. Half the time you get the answers wrong, she's not hearing you correctly, and this sounds way different.
Yeah, but I will say that like voice detection and dialect, language, those are a lot harder for models to be able to manage. So when you're working with the chatbot, you're putting everything in narrative form. So it's obviously going to have a higher level of accuracy. But I hope that everyone can find value in it. You can even go to the chatbot and say, hey, my everyday job is X, Y, and Z. What are some good use cases that I should use your chatbot for? And literally just ask it that, and it will give you a couple examples.
Yeah. Well, what I do know about chatbots specifically is that it's only as good as the information you're putting into it. And so the information you're getting out of it, if you're saying, oh, stupid Alexa, it's probably because you're not even asking Alexa the right things, or maybe you're not providing enough context or information.
I think it's the voice text stuff.
Sure.
And the distance from the speaker.
Sure.
Yeah.
But, even ChatGPT, I mean, you go and you say, hey, give me a recipe for a Mexican dish. And then next thing you know, it gives you a recipe for chimichangas, and you wanted a recipe for tacos. And, it's a bad example. But the point is, like,
I was like, well, why didn't you just ask for the recipe for tacos? I feel
that's a good point.
Yeah.
But the point is, like, it's only going to give you information that you're really looking for. Like, you have to give context and give some background behind it, or else it's not going to give you what you're looking for.
Yep. I do want to state to everyone that if you're going to use this stuff, one of the biggest tips is do not put your personal identifiable information into the chatbot. Your name, social security number, date of birth, because it merges all of that data together and it saves it. And some of these chatbots, they may not anonymize the data or protect it. So definitely be mindful, especially if you're using it for your personal life, even with work. If there's confidential information at work, don't copy and paste and put that in there. You can maybe talk high level about the situation or the scenario, but don't be putting like the secret ingredient recipe to everything you're doing for your SaaS product into it. So definitely have some safeguards with it. I will say that a lot of businesses are prioritizing the use of these chatbots. My company, Reorg, they're so wonderful that they've really invested in AI innovation. We have an AI innovation team outside of our full tech org, and we just launched the use of Google Gemini, Microsoft Copilot, and GitHub Copilot for all of our employees, because the goal is we want to help empower them to be able to do their job and help them work smarter, not harder. And the goal is not to eliminate their job, but really to help them increase their capacity. And the reality is, yes, will hiring probably slow down in a couple years? Yeah, because we'll have these people who utilize AI. They'll be able to do more. So it's going to be a balance. But again, find fun ways to use it. have serious conversations. It's just like your everyday life. You're gonna have hard moments. You're gonna have funny moments. You're gonna have sad moments. Have all of those moments in the way that you choose, and you'll find your level of comfort as we kind of go through this transformation with AI really just being the hot topic of the entire global world right now.
So what are your, when you're thinking down the future, and obviously, we can't predict exactly how it's going to play out, but, I think that there is a fear that, like you said, it's going to eliminate jobs, right? But I think in the past you've seen, the Industrial Revolution is a great example. Like when machines replace some people in certain, areas of our economy, like it also created a lot of jobs too. Mm-hmm. So the way that I see it working out is like, the human element that would be very difficult to replace is going to be even more of value. So like someone like you who can direct a chat bot or something, and knowing the exact question to direct it to be ultimately efficient would be a skill, right?
Yes.
Like learning how to, look up the weather 4 days from now is something that we can automate now, right? So, or predict, what your packing list could be. So I think I'm not, particularly fearful about it, but, what are your thoughts on how it's going to play out?
Yeah. So I take the comparison to YouTube, frankly, because once we had YouTube, a lot of people started making how-to videos. So one of my favorite things to do when I travel for work, I like to keep my house probably at like between 62 and 66 degrees Fahrenheit. I like my house to be cold, and I don't like when I go to hotels that they lock the AC thermostat that you can't lower it below like 68 or something. So I actually go to YouTube and I looked how to override the locks, and I just manually look up a video and then reset it myself. So it's something you could potentially ask a chatbot to do, although visuals are, I find, to be a little bit more digestible information for everyday humans, but also do you want to sit there and watch a 10-minute video? But if you think about trades, especially manual labor, say you're someone who is a auto mechanic, you could watch a video to learn how to change out a starter for a car or how to rotate tires. But you're probably not going to master that unless you have practical hands-on experience. It's the same thing when using a chatbot. You can go and learn from it and use it, but you still as an individual have to put those things into practice to become a master. So one of my favorite quotes is, there's always practice in glory, there's never glory in practice. So I hope that people find some type of highlight in that. I did steal that from Norwich University, shout out Vermont. But it's something that, again, we as individuals need to have a growth mindset. So use these tools to help you learn and grow, help you with those blind spots. And then you can actually take your time to focus on human interaction, providing great customer service, providing a great product, prioritizing things that do need that white glove approach.
Amazing. So what is your biggest takeaway after this amazing discussion here with Shelby? What are you going to do? How are you going to implement in your life?
Well, I know internally as a team, I'm going to use ChatGPT a little bit more. Especially for us, working on some of our internal sales tools. That's what I'm going to do.
All right.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it. Love
exactly.
It. What would you do?
I'm going to do whatever you guys tell me that you should be doing. But,
or the chatbot tells you to do.
Or the chatbot tells me. Right? I think I could find it useful to do some of these, maybe not like some analysis. Sometimes a client will want you to do. What about this neighborhood? Is there crime? Whatever. I'll look up that stuff, make my own summary, and send that to them. It's nothing that we're like, it's not set in stone. It's not a guaranteed statement. It's just, this is kind of a summary in general. Stuff like that, I think I could definitely save a ton of time doing. Because I can, maybe the request should take me 20 minutes, but then I might get in a rabbit hole, and then I'm looking up things that I'm like, how did I even get here? And 2 hours later, I still haven't answered the question.
Yeah. Or you're trying to figure out, is my house going to appraise for this month? And one of my past realtors, Carly, who was with the Wagner Group, I was really worried about it because as a veteran, I used a VA loan, and we went $80,000-$90,000 over list price. And I was like, I don't think this is going to appraise. Like, it was so much over list price. I was really worried. She's like, no, I'm going to do an analysis. I'm going to send the appraisal people everything that they need. What you could do today is literally take all of those files for the different houses that have sold in the market. If you pay for the premium version of like ChatGPT, you could upload those files, like all 5 or 10 of them, and say, hey, can you come up with an analysis on what the dollar per square foot is for this neighborhood in the city, and then the other type of data points that you usually have to come up with. It will actually like analyze those documents and output everything that you need.
Right.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
So you can get the data, in front of you quicker, and then,
Then
make your own analysis.
You got to still interpret the data
Right.
and put perspective.
But I mean,
on it,
compiling numbers to come up with some, deviation, standard deviation of an estimate that's kind of the busy work part of it. And
Yep.
then,
And you could
thinking
tell it to
about
put
what
in
does
a-
this mean to my client? That's the,
Yeah, and you could tell it to put in like table formats, like, hey, for this section, can you put this in a digestible table?
Yeah.
Can you maybe put this in bullet points? Can you summarize this for this specific audience? This is too lengthy. Can you shorten this summary here? I literally go back and forth in the chatbot with that type of stuff to help me write documentation. Because I have horrible grammar.
Yeah.
I'm really good.
Really?
Yeah, horrible. Had a couple head injuries, but really good at mathematics. Love physics. I'm actually
hated English.
I'm really good at reading and have good comprehension there. Grammar, not my strong suit.
Yeah.
So.
You speak very eloquently. You sound like an AI chatbot when you're speaking right now. Like with how precise you are with everything you're saying. I love it.
That's just the tiny person syndrome.
What about you though? What are you?
Yeah, me, I'm just going to delete Google and start putting everything in ChatGPT so I can learn it and see what happens. Right?
And you can download the app on your phone too
Yeah.
and utilize it on your mobile device.
I have it there, and I just don't default in my mind, use it. There's so many applications to it. I'm about to spend an hour doing this research. How can I save more time and do this research for a whole hour? Here's the information I'm trying to get. I'm just going to use it in those ways and see what happens.
Yep. And just take it as a baseline, because from there you can say, hey, I don't like this, or this seemed to be accurate. Can you give it a second go? And you can give it a little tap on the rear end and say, hey, I want you to hyper focus here.
It's like a new employee, right?
Yes.
It takes you a while to figure out that you get in sync with the new employee, the new team member.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
I just love how with these chatbots, I mean, you can go and ask them to do whatever it is, and you say, make it sound more eloquent, and then they'll go and rewrite it again, or make it sound a little more aggressive, and then you can rewrite it again. And it's like, I mentioned this earlier, but one of the things that I'm actually really excited about is, I've never done this before, but really taking the emotional response out of email. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think we've all been through that situation before where you've had that negative or emotional response to what you're reading, and then before you press reply, and then you start typing out this email, and it's not a very positive email, and next thing you know, you could throw it into ChatGPT, let it do it for you, take that same email, make this not as negative, and make this not as...
or the vice versa. You could actually take a screenshot of the email that you have that emotion, and you could upload it to ChatGPT and say, hey, I felt X, Y, and Z about this. Am I reading into this correctly? Because all of us, we work with we work with people from all different backgrounds, ethnicities, different countries, and the way that everyone is raised is differently. So there's different cultural things that you have to be able to nuance. So especially working in tech, we do everything via instant message, like Slack, email stuff. I very much read with emotion, and it's something I'm not good at. So being able to say hey, someone sent this to me and it triggered me in this way, and I didn't feel very good about it. What are things that I consider or read into this better? And it helps. I can then learn from that and grow personally and professionally.
Well, that's one of the challenges with, the way our civilizations move in their communication styles. through text message. I mean, text messages are misinterpreted all the time.
Yeah, there's no tension. Like, yeah.
Correct. I mean,
Yeah, like I heard something the other day, like when the thumbs up. Some people, like younger generation, views that as like a middle finger in some ways.
Okay.
Where which I thought that seems pretty extreme, but it's
I
kind
do
of
a
like,
lot of thumbs
yeah,
up
what is it?
text.
Okay is
Or
bad.
K, you just say K.
Yeah,
Yeah.
K is bad, which is like okay, whatever, But it's funny because like you can read something and then you read it later, you're like, oh, I totally got that the wrong way,
Yeah.
just by that. But
My younger sister is like 15, 16 years younger than me. She's graduating from high school in May. And I would literally go to ChatGPT and be like, can you tell me like what the Gen Z slang words are? What does this mean? She was going around being like, that. And I was like, what is this language? You're a lizard person.
My God, awesome. Well, you probably didn't learn much from us today, but we learned a ton from you, Shelby. Thank you for being on our show. If people want to reach out to you, how would they get a hold of you?
Yeah, they could reach out to me on LinkedIn, Shelby, Shelby, Talent with 2 L's. Tall, but I'm very short. And I'm always open to really discussing everyone's interest in AI. If there's things that you're thinking about how to use it for, or generally you just want to understand what are best practices I can use it in my data life or even my type of job. Those are things that I would be happy to share insights into. I hope that everyone feels comfortable with it, but also at the same time, I want people to know that there are people out there in this world today that are really focused on the governance of it and making sure that we are using it in an ethical and best practice way. So there has to be some type of balance in the world, but don't be scared of the change. Just start to integrate it and test it on your own accord. So,
Yeah,
love it.
love it. Yep. I'm ready.
Thanks, Shelby.
no
I'm
problem.
ready. Yeah, thank you, Shelby.
Thanks.
All right, everybody. We'll see you on the next show. Thank you.